Turning Red, the next film from Disney Pixar, is not going to be hitting movie theaters. It's going to be going exclusively to Disney Plus in March. Now, I want to talk to you guys today about what that means for Disney Pixar, why it's happening, and ultimately what we think this means for the future of the studio and the perception of their films, their ability to open. My name is Ben Bateman. This is Action Industries. We're going to talk about this for a few minutes today. If it's your first time here, we do reviews, we do trailer reactions, we do a show called The Best and the Worst. It's a podcast that's also available here on the channel. Check it out if you haven't already, and of course hit subscribe if all of this sounds good to you. Let's talk about Turning Red. This movie's coming out in March. It was initially going to be a theatrically released film. Now, if you guys remember back at the beginning of the pandemic, Onward was actually one of the movies that released into the pandemic. That first weekend in March of 2020, none of us knew how long we were going to be in a position where, theatrical releases had been reduced or where theaters were not going to have ticket sales that actually justified the release of films. We weren't really there yet. We didn't know. So Onward ended up actually being released on Disney Plus, on the streaming service a bit earlier. Now, earlier than normal. It came out a little bit after that. So Onward was kind of a little bit of a taste of things to come. But it's an interesting question when you talk about a kids genre film like that one or like the rest of the things that Pixar releases versus these other giant blockbuster films. And you have to ask yourself the question, when a studio like Pixar is making the decision to pull a film and put it on a streaming service, which costs anywhere between $70 a year and I think $100 and change depending on when you signed up, what do they think they're getting out of it? And why are they doing it? Because it does actually have ripple effects on the way that we perceive films. After Onward came out, Pixar's next several films went exclusively to Disney Plus. The only one of them that had a short theatrical release was Encanto, which came out in November and I think went wide in December. But Soul was exclusively on Disney Plus, as was Luca, and as is going to be Turning Red. And I think it's interesting because Pixar had really separated from the rest of the animated studios. And while Illumination and Blue Sky and DreamWorks all made films that people liked, like the How to Train Your Dragon franchise, for instance, is totally beloved. There are certain films that come out from the other studios that people do really think are good, and they review them in a way where they take them seriously. Not all animated films get that treatment, but Pixar was still just total cut above, right? They've won way more Best Animated Films of the Year at the Oscars than anybody else. They are truly talked about as art films. Now, personally, having watched some of these movies, like Luca's a fine movie. I think it's okay. It doesn't stand out to me. But then again, some of the later releases from Pixar in this last decade, they're kind of medium as well. Some of the sequels, not my favorite movies. I don't love Finding Dory. I'm not the biggest Monsters University fan. They're not bad movies, but they're probably not that much better than a lot of their animated counterparts coming out from the other studios. Now, this decision ultimately is speaking to the fact that many children are not vaccinated, so parents don't really want to be taking their kids to movie theaters. So if a Pixar film opens into a theater and it's not able to make its money back, obviously that's bad for the studio. It also means a lot of kids won't see it, right? Or if they do see it, they'll end up seeing it on the streaming service anyway. If they push it to the streaming service right away and they make it available there and they promote the crap out of it, some parents might sign up because they want to watch The Book of Boba Fett, or they want to have access to all of the other good things on Disney Plus, and that also gives them an opportunity to show an animated film to their kids. Now, where I think it has the biggest effect is on my perception, your perception as the film goer. Now, if you are a kid, like a little child, and you're watching this video right now, you're very well informed in the movie world, but most children don't really care about it. They're not even aware of the fact that the whole movie theaters versus streaming service versus premium access where you have to pay $29.99 or $19.99 is even a thing. It's not even in their mind, right? They're going to grow up with memories of having watched these movies, having watched Luca on Disney Plus, and it's going to be a movie that was, to them a real movie. Very much in the same way that if you loved Disney in the 90s, like when I was growing up, Aladdin 2, The Return of Jafar was a movie that we watched, right? I watched that movie, even though it wasn't in theaters. Even though now by today's standards, it's not even in the same conversation as the 90s Disney classics. But as a kid, you just don't care. Planes, great example. Cars is a Pixar movie. Planes is a Pixar movie. Planes was never in theaters. So I think from the perspective of who they're hoping consumes their film and then makes the movie sort of feel like a classic, it's not going to have much of an impact on the children. It will have an effect on people who actually talk about movies and try to rank movies and promote movies. Because frankly, this last year and a half's worth of Pixar releases have been kind of off my radar. Whereas most of the time, in most cases, I'm pretty attached to most stuff Pixar puts out. It feels like an event. A Pixar movie is a big deal. I still haven't even seen Encanto. That's what this movie, Encanto, or what Turning Red or what Luca meant. They weren't really movies that I went out of my way to watch. And I'll tell you guys, Soul, which I did watch, it's in my top 3 Pixar movies. I love that movie. I was excited for that movie. That movie felt like it belonged in theaters. And I think a lot of people didn't watch it. I think a lot of people still are kind of unaware of some of these movies that have come out. So the decision to release Turning Red probably speaks to where they think the world's going to be in terms of box office as it speaks to children in March. Probably also speaks to the quality of this movie, would be my guess. If this was Toy Story 5 or something like that, or if this was Ratatouille or something like that, just came up with that, probably this hits a theater. I think they probably just delay the release of the movie. I'll bet you Turning Red is just intended to be slightly like a smaller release, and so they're okay with this. It does draw people onto the platform and maybe get people to actually sign up for Disney+. But it's certainly an interesting conversation. I mean, we keep seeing this intersection between, Spider-Man No Way Home is a film that speaks to both adults and children, but it definitely does have a strong audience of kids. Kids love Spider-Man, and that movie made a lot of money. So studio can't really say, if there's demand for my movie, kids won't see it in theaters. It's just simply not true. Whereas on the other hand, adult dramas, movies like West Side Story, movies like The Matrix Resurrections, those movies just aren't really working for studios right now. And we don't really know what the long-term effect of people signing up for a subscription actually means. We don't know how that's going to bear out in terms of subscription dollars versus marketing budgets and costs to actually make the movies. So that's what's going on. I wanted to talk to you guys about it today. I think with a movie like Turning Red, it's fine. I think if they do this one more time, and it's with a movie that is slightly more high profile than this, I think they're in serious trouble. Because I don't think that Pixar wants to lose that place in the sun as the premier animated studio. I really just think if they do lose that, the momentum to pick it back up is so difficult to achieve when there are so many other animated studios making really high quality stuff with similar budgets and similar casts. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think below. Do you think that this is a final move for Disney Pixar? Do you expect to see their films being released in theaters after this? Have you seen all the movies I talked about? Did you see Encanto or Luca or Soul or Onward, because it was kind of a hybrid release? And what did you think of them? Do you think that Pixar right now is as good as Pixar has ever been? I'm curious to know where you guys stand on the studio. All right, that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Be sure to check out patreon.com/teamaction if you guys like the content that we do here. And, of course, our show, The Best and the Worst. We have The Best and the Worst of Paul Thomas Anderson films coming out next week, available here on the channel and also on audio. So thanks for watching, guys. Leave a comment, hit subscribe, thumbs up on the video. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.